Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Joel Elston here. Today is Thursday, May the 10th, 2018, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, your first daily dose of happy for the day. And we're happy that Joel's back with us once again. We only get to talk to him once a week, but it's always great to talk to him once a week. Joel, how are you doing, my friend?
Things are excellent. It's great to be here again. I look forward to my Thursday mornings every week.
I look forward to them also, and for good reason. Today being no exception, because today we're talking about something that everything always ties into everything, but this ties into one of our favorite topics, which is who's in control? Who's in control of our thoughts? So many of us are so used by default to not be in control of our thoughts. They just kind of happen to us. Things just kind of happen to us. But as we've talked about on so many occasions, until we take control of our thoughts, we don't gain control. That's where the driver's seat is. That's where the steering wheel is. And you posted something to that effect on your Facebook page, specifically pointing out that even positive people can experience negative thoughts, but we're the ones who get to decide which ones we're going to be in control of, which ones we're going to pay attention to, and which ones we're going to avoid. I thought that was a great post.
Well, I appreciate it. And it certainly is sort of the basis of what we talk about. I think people sometimes, especially when they're trying to figure this out, they have a false belief that, well, you don't have any negative thoughts, or they hear me talk about the concepts of law of attraction, and their view of it is, well, Joel, you don't see it the way I see it, or you don't have negative thoughts, you don't have negative things happening. Well, I'm first of all glad that I can put on that I'm so positive people believe nothing negative happens.
There you go.
But the choice in any given day, and this is what I see people effectively use weekly, is this concept that I am in charge of my thoughts. The negative thoughts, there isn't a magical button that you can press, that there isn't an automatic negative thought that will pop. Things happen. Traffic happens. Traffic jams happen. People not showing up for appointments happen. All these things are out there. Your thoughts are in charge. I have, I'm on the back end of a cold. I occasionally get in a cold, and, never slows me down. But last week it felt like, okay, I'm really, really, I would like some extra rest. Well, I had this appointment that this young man had set with me, and I was like, I really, it was sort of an awkward time of the day, but it's going to require me to go into my office. I was on the other side of town, and I'm thinking, for a second I thought, well, maybe I'll cancel this appointment, just reschedule. I said, no, he's made this appointment, and I'll be fine. So I get there and get into my office, and again have a little fever, and I have a lot I need to get done that I can't do at my office. And all of a sudden I realize it's 15 minutes past when he's supposed to be there. No phone call, no anything. So I was like, oh, okay. So I immediately went to see. I went out of my way and just had a sort of a whole negative around the entire thing. I said, and I stopped myself and said, look, this is not the biggest event that's going to happen. If this is the worst thing that happens all week, if some person doesn't show up for an appointment, with all the else that I have going on, this will be a great week. And I have to reframe it, I'm using a pretty benign example, and I want to use a benign example because the big stuff, we have a tendency to be able to deal, at least I do, with on a bigger level. It's the more the benign stuff that has the sort of the ability to sneak in on me. The big stuff I'm well guarded against, but the little no-show appointments or some of that other stuff, it's so easy to find yourself quickly thinking negative,
isn't it?
And if you just flip, and that's what I find to me is I spend a lot of energy on working to make sure the bigger stuff doesn't defeat me. But that little teeny annoying stuff is where it has sort of because it has a low level clearance, so to speak, to get in there, that you're almost not prepared for it. And then you have to be able to adjust it. And to me, that's the key to the law of attraction is choosing your thoughts. Which one is it? Is it, I have an incredible career that I love what I do, And the idea that I'm able to do this with the, and make a good living is such a great thing. That's what I should focus on. Now, along the way, there are going to be events or things within the job that I don't particularly like. I can focus on the overall view of the incredible job I have, or I can let the little things that I don't like dictate to me which it is. And clearly, we want to focus on the positive side of those things.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. In fact, we have a technical term here on the podcasts that we do daily. We call those the niggly things. That's the official technical term for all those little things that can get us upset if we allow them to. And in fact, one just happened just now while you were talking. I don't know if you heard it, but there was a door slamming. And this happens with many of the podcasts because while I'm doing the podcast, my wife goes out to start doing the gardening work. And inevitably, she slams the door as she goes out. And I say to myself, oh, she slammed the door again. Nope. Wait a minute. That's a niggly thing. We don't get upset about niggly things. Let it go. We're doing a podcast. This is great. But it's so easy for them to just slip in there.
Yeah. Well, and those are the things that, when you have a sort of a picture of life, and that's a really good example of, you have a vision of what this is supposed to be. We've done this, you and I have done this for a while now. And along the way, we've gone through 40 minutes in a show realizing we didn't have anything turned on. It was just you and I talking.
That's annoying. Oh boy.
Yeah, we've done that. I think that's been more than once we've done that.
I think so. Yes.
And through our growing pains, and as we're trying to figure out the formats and all the other stuff, there were times where we had this very awkward delay that it was very weird to talk on. And,
that's right.
So throughout the time, it hasn't been done perfectly, but we've been able to do it, and I view it as such a positive. I don't focus on those handful of shows that things didn't work out right. That's not my focus at all. My focus is on what an incredible benefit it's been to me to do the show with you. And so life has vision in it. I forget the exact saying, so I'll butcher it up pretty well for you, but life is never what you're going to view it's going to be. Accepting what it is when you understand happiness. There's going to be doors shut during podcasts. There's going to be, to me, the favorite part, my mom used to direct weddings. She was just this very professional wedding director. She loved to do that. It was a hobby. She's probably directed over 2 or 3, I don't know, maybe over 300 weddings during her life.
Yeah.
And she loved it, but she was also a stickler for perfection. I mean, she wanted it and would get frustrated when it didn't go exactly as planned. Well, to me, the funny part that people talk about at weddings is when the random, the kid decides to throw the pillow with the ring on it across the room, or sit down, or the plant falls over. Those are the things to me that, it adds humanity to the wedding. Well, it used to drive her crazy. And I would laugh because she had this production set up that it would frustrate her if it did not go without a hitch. And she would get frustrated with the usually younger people, of course, getting married, and they would sometimes show up the night before for rehearsal, slightly mood altered, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And those things, I'm like, Mom, you can't let them. That's the nature of the business. It's just either accept it or move on. Well, she kept doing it, and she loved it for the most part, but her tendency was to look for what went wrong and let that define. Whereas I like to look at, what goes right, what is meant to happen with this, what are we trying to do? And so this is where we're applying our ability to say, I want to focus with my positive thought process. Negative thoughts are going to be there. Doors are going to slam. People aren't going to show, but I want to focus on the other stuff. It makes it more real.
It does.
And it to me, and as I look at my life, that's what I want to do. Don't get stuck on the minutia. As a parent, I have adopted a total of 3 boys, 2 of them several years ago, and then Justin recently. And one thing that I've noticed that I've become a much better parent in the sense that very little bothers me. There's very little. I understand it's not going to go perfectly. I understand that we're going to have these things happen that before it would drive me crazy. Why are we doing this? Well, we're doing it because we're doing it, and we'll be okay with it. I look at things with a much more positive overall direction. If it's not the end of the world, I don't need to respond like it's the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Let me save for my end of the world responses when it really is important.
Yeah, right.
And that's and that's about, where are you putting your energy? What is it? Is it one of the areas that I've worked on the most, I would say in the last year, is my frustration while driving. When people clearly would if they just get out of the left lane alone, that would solve 90% of my frustration. Or
I know that one.
yeah. Or I can realize at the end of the day, if I'm there at 12:31 or 12:33, does it matter? Really?
Nope.
Is it worth frustration?
Nope.
And that's the piece that I've worked on the most is other people's performance, or and then it like when we have several places in Richmond where roads merge, getting onto interstate. And if everybody would just time their merge together,
mm-hmm.
traffic would never slow down. But
Nope.
what would happen is you have everybody trying to be the traffic police and block the other one off and not let the other one in. Well, it in the end, you cost yourself time with that.
You cost yourself frustration too.
Yes. And I've seen grown men almost come to blows over who's going to get on first or second.
Oh yeah. I have a couple stories to share along that line. One, just on that particular thing. There was one time, this is many years ago, when I had to do a commute into Fairfield County, Connecticut, which is toward New York City. And there was this one occasion where there was this one guy, he was determined, no matter what, to be in front of everybody. And he had a really nasty way of doing it. He'd pull in front of you and then he'd slow way, way down. So you had to slow down too. So you'd go around him and he'd whip around you and slow you down again. Like, what's going on here? So after a couple of those, I finally got to my exit and I got off the highway, and he followed me, and you could see he was after me. I don't even know why he was after me, but he was after me. Like I had, violated some rule of his about how traffic should go. I ended up driving to the police station before he finally decided to leave it alone. I mean, he hung on to it like a dog biting into a bone and refusing to let go. It was amazing. And that just really illustrates how easily we can fall into that trap of, something just didn't go right. And by God, I'm not going to let go of it. Now, the other story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The other story I wanted to tell, because you mentioned your mom with the wedding planning. And I thought, wow, that's perfect, because Louise and I, when we got married, we had one of those incidences. And it was an incident where, in hindsight, it was funny. But at the time, it was terribly frustrating. What happened was, and this, like you said, this happens in so many weddings. This kind of thing, there's always one thing that goes wrong, and you just kind of expect it because that's the way weddings go, Well, in this particular case, I was at the venue waiting for my wife to show up in the limo, and it was starting to run late. I'm thinking, where is she? And my brother's there; he's going to be my best man, and the other people are there, and I'm greeting people. I'm thinking, where's Louise? All of a sudden, my brother, who has never been the most perfectly planned out communicator in the world, he just kind of does things and lets you know about it later. All of a sudden, He gets up and he goes into the audience and takes all the men away from the venue. And I'm thinking, where are they going? I mean, they're all filing outside. Like, I have no idea what's going on. I said, Mark, what's going on? He says, it's okay, don't worry. And that's the last I heard of him for the next 20 minutes. And then finally, Louise showed up. We're really running late at this point, and we get married and so on and so forth. I find out afterward what happened was that the limo driver was driving didn't have a reverse. And the reverse gear just didn't work. So they got to a point in the parking lot where he needed to turn around in order to get to the place where he dropped my fiance to become wife, off, and he couldn't back up. So she got on her cell, called my brother. My brother took all the men to push the car backward.
Oh,
So he could
that's
finally
awesome.
turn around and come to let her off at the door. That's what the delay was, and you listen to it, it's hysterically funny. But at the time, I was pulling my hair out, like, what is going on here?
Well,
So,
and that becomes such that is the answer that we need to look at daily. Life is unscripted. Our frustration often comes when we try to enforce a script on life, and the expectations of what that script looks like is really impressive to us. Well, I want it to do this way, or if this person does this, then this will work out, and then everything will be fine. Then life happens. The ability to positively look at the unscripted parts of life and not allow the uncertainty of what we're going through is a big, big positive if you can do that.
oh
And
yes,
and just realize it's a plot twist. It's whatever you want to call it. Don't get wound up about the stuff you didn't plan, because nobody ever. We all had a vision. If we could magically go back and interview our 18-year-old selves, we have a vision of what our life would be like. And then we go forward to when we're 50. How many people's life match? I'm sure some do, but very few match what they wanted to do when they were 18. We don't plan. We don't. You can't plan for the unexpected. One of the things that my son Justin asked the other day, and I thought it was such a great question, and he meant it in a very positive way. There's guys that we were behind a garbage truck, and they were loading the garbage cans in, and he asked the question. He said, "Why are they garbage men?" And I said, I didn't really understand that question. And he said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, did they want to be garbage men?" And I go, "I don't know." I said, "More than likely they did not. It's a good way to make a living. They pay well. It's something they ran across, and they need to support their family. But I doubt many people set out at a younger age saying, 'I'm going to be a garbage man.'" But accepting that's where a need is, and they're supporting their family, so it's an honorable thing to do.
mm-hmm.
And so we had that discussion about about choices. I said I'm sure the day that they applied to be a garbage man, they probably had run through a bunch of other choices that weren't available, or a lot of life situations happen. And so we all have the version of that going on of we all wanted to be this, or we all wanted this to happen, and then we end up where we're at. Accepting where we're at, being happy where we're at, is the answer, instead of worrying about where we should have been or the negative of where we should have been. It's such a great way to sort of look at it, and it is the answer of what we're talking about today.
Mm-hmm. Wendy told a story recently about people who worked at, it was something she saw on TV. I think they worked at a sewage treatment plant. It was something like that, something really, really yucky. And she said
Right.
on the video, they showed people wearing these waders that went up to their chest, wading through the stuff, stirring it to do some sort of important function that was needed in the treatment of this stuff. And the people in the video were making it clear that the people who were actually wading out to this had a great deal of pride in their work. So we can't even assume that they don't like what they're doing. They may actually like it a lot. Like you say, they may not have been dreaming about it when they were 12, but that doesn't mean that they don't take a great deal of pride in it.
Well, and that's the point. You take pride. The Secret talks about this a lot, and most other practitioners, law of attraction. Taking where you're at, mentally taking where you're at, and saying, "This is where I'm at. I need to accept it and move forward." Period. And instead of, "Oh, I shouldn't be here." I have I have tons of friends, that are people that I've known over the years working with addiction. That addiction often sends people in lives and directions they never dreamed, and they end up doing things they never thought they would do. But being happy with where you're at, that's what the Secret's talking about. And you can change jobs if you want. That's not going to make you happy. Get happy first. Get positive thoughts first, and then see where it goes. your job will improve when your attitude toward your job improves. It'll improve instantly.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Yeah. And in fact, you really can't improve your life until you change the thought process first. That's what I learned the hard way. I spent a lot of time on the other side of that fence. And let me tell you, it's not a happy place to be. But once you decide to somehow, anyhow, using every method that is ever explained to you to get yourself into that happy place, then all of a sudden, all kinds of stuff starts to happen. It doesn't all pile in on you instantly, but over time, it starts to happen. More and more things happen that feel good, that have good results, the results that you like, mostly unexpected, mostly serendipitous, but they still happen. And they start to accumulate after a while. But that can't happen until you get yourself to a happy place. If you're in a place of despair or depression or anger or rage or whatever, it ain't happening. There's nothing you can do is going to change that until you decide to change, which is why it's so important to be in control of our own emotions.
Yeah, I have I'm thinking of one young man in particular that has, he left college. He's been to 2 or 3 different colleges. It hasn't worked out. He got a job at a grocery store locally. He was determined that, he's been through multiple jobs in his short life, and nothing's ever right. It's all negative. And he just texted me the other day trying to put a positive spin on it, and saying that he left the grocery store job after 3 weeks, and is now working in a restaurant. He's much happier, he said. And I said, you're happy for 4 or 5 days until you quit this job. And he didn't like that answer. And he said, well, that's a bad attitude to have. I go, no, I said, why did you leave the other job? Well, he had a list of reasons. I said, but that's similar to the list of the last 4 jobs you left. the last two colleges you left were because of your roommates. The last, and so I said, until you change you, it's not gonna make any difference.
Isn't it annoying? And, we always take ourselves wherever we go, and we can never escape ourselves. We're always there.
Yeah. That's what geographical cures to situations don't work until you just accept. Here is me. Here's where I'm at. Here's what I'm doing. I need to adjust me and move forward. That's an ongoing process, and it's such a. I'm in charge of that happiness piece. And being in charge of your happiness is not a destination. It's an internal event. And once you get that, then you become happy. Then everything else has the potential to be whatever you want it to be. Or it can just keep being redundant as you keep looking for something to fulfill you. It's that, well, this job will be better, or, well, this guy picks on me. And my response is, there's always going to be somebody that picks on you. That's your perception. I mean, you keep, it's the same answers you have every time. And our ability to change that is really the great gift that humans have been given. But it's also one that's vastly underused. I mean, most people do not know how to utilize that ability to choose your thoughts. Negative thoughts are there. Negative events are there. But our choice of the positive remains ours and solely ours. No one else can dictate that for you.
Yeah, that's actually one of your best tools in it, isn't it? The ability that you have to notice, usually pretty quickly, where someone is repeating a pattern. Because whenever we're repeating a pattern, that's a great big indicator. And in each one of those cases, the pattern is one that's in some way negative, and is repeating a negative behavior that is usually being blamed on some sort of external circumstance or on somebody else or whatever else. But the point is, we're the ones that are doing it. We're the ones that are repeating the pattern. And it brings to mind, for me, the mirror exercises that Jack Canfield recommended that I started doing about 2.5 months ago, almost 3 months ago, which have made a huge difference in my life. But the core idea behind them is we don't love ourselves enough. We don't give ourselves enough love and appreciation. We often think that we do, but we really don't. We actually spend a lot more time harping on ourselves. Most of us do anyway. And the beauty of the mirror exercise, it's like so many processes and methods, is that it really makes one focus on appreciating oneself, looking right in the mirror in one's own eyes. It's a little uncomfortable at first, but boy, oh boy, is that effective. I've been doing it now, I think I'm not sure what the exact count is, somewhere around 80 days. And during that time period, my ability to handle and to basically slough off negative stuff has improved immensely. So I really do think most of it starts with, if you want to get happy, you got to start loving yourself more.
Yes, yes, and having and giving yourself a break.
Yeah.
You're where you are is where you are. Whether you screwed up to get here, or whether other people have screwed up, or here's where you exist, and that becomes the answer. Just being happy where you exist, and then possibilities open up. But as long as you're miserable, and as long as you're looking for what's wrong, as long as that's your filter, then you're going to have nothing coming into your life but what is wrong. That will be everything coming in your life.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
That makes a big difference.
It's nice to know. Difference. It's nice to know that we're in control. It's nice to know that we actually do have the power. That was one of the first really great, what's the word I'm looking for? Breakthroughs, light bulb moments that I had when I was exploring the law of attraction early on, that I really could control my own feelings. I could control my reactions. And I could decide what they were going to be regardless of what was going on. I could decide to feel good in a bad situation. That was mind-blowing to me. When I first was presented with that idea, my first reaction was absolutely no way. Stuff happens. I don't have any control over how I feel about stuff happens. I really believed that. It was only when I first finally started to try to apply it and realized I could actually feel good in a bad situation that, well, not only did it empower me, it blew my mind. I couldn't believe it.
Well, and that is to me, the discovery that you're talking about is the most empowering thing that human beings can find out about themselves. Now, the part that baffles me, and I don't have an answer other than just what I've observed, is even after making that discovery, you would hope that the negative thoughts were easily dismissed, or negative. You hope that, okay, I've made this discovery, I'm good now. But it still takes a long time, if ever, that I don't know if you can ever totally get rid of stuff, but it does take a long time before you have, at least for me, before I started having the majority of my thoughts were positive. I still have those moments, and I still have those. Especially, I try to identify when something really gets to me. One of the things that I got frustrated with my son the other day about was I picked him up from his after-school program, and I have very little patience for most things that involve bullying. I don't like that mindset. Mm-hmm. And he was picking on a child that was smaller and younger than he was. And I was very frustrated with him, because it's the one button that I don't like to see happen. It's the one button I could be pressed on.
It's a hot button. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so I realized when the guy was telling me that, and Justin was standing right there, I had a very negative thought process going on. And I knew that if I were to talk at that time, then nothing but negative was going to come out. Now, I'm aware of it. That's how aware I am.
Which is good.
But I also, I realized. So, and Justin started to explain, which was going to make things much worse. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I said, right now, we're just going to go home. I said, when I'm not angry and when I'm not frustrated, then we'll discuss it. But if we discuss it now, it's not going to be good. Mm. And I'm able to. So even from in a moment of identifying, this is all negative. I didn't have probably for about 10 minutes. I didn't have the ability to turn it to a positive discussion, but I at least could identify that. And so there's a difference there. I can use that acknowledgement and to just say, let me get to a place where I can. And then we had a good discussion about it, and I explained that when you do that, and the energy attached to being a bully is very negative. And we went and I thought we had a very big discussion, and I explained to him that while this was a first time we've had to have this discussion, going forward, I mean, bullies will not have cell phones. Bullies won't have internet access.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, but right now that we've had that discussion, and it'll be good. So hopefully it's sunk in. But that is something that, life, we all have those buttons. We all have those things that can be pressed. And not responding in that state that you want to, or a condition to respond to, becomes so important. And even if you can't flip positive immediately, you got to wait it out until that boiling point goes away a little bit. And then, then you get there.
Well, exactly. I mean, yeah, there are certain things that we all have hot buttons about, and we're all working on trying to remove, the sting of them, the heat of them as much as we can. And over time, we're probably making progress if we're staying in a positive frame of mind most of the time. But, every once in a while, they get pushed. And when they get pushed, well, we have a couple ways to react. You chose to react by saying, you know what? I know that I'm not going to react well now, so I'm just going to shut up for a moment until I can calm myself down, which was a great thing to do. I mean, it's like Abraham Hicks talks about. If you're looking at their emotional guidance scale that they use, where they have like 22 different positions on the scale from really, really happy to really, really depressed. If you're in the depressed range, your best bet is probably not to go for happy. It's just too big of a step.
Right.
You just can't get there that fast. So climb up to rage instead. At least it's higher up on the scale. And then go for frustration, and then maybe go for contentment. Don't go right to happy. You'll never get there.
Well, that's exactly the piece that I always try to get through to people, is that exactly what you're describing. It is this initial reaction of I want to go from this point to this point. It's too big of a chasm to jump too often. I've used that analogy about people who come to me. They're making $45,000 a year and they want to make $1 million a year. Well, I'm not saying it's not possible to get there.
No, it's possible.
But it's not probable because you don't believe you can go from there to there. But most people believe they can go from 45 to 60.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you get to 60, then 60 to 75. I mean, it has to be in believable steps of what your reality is.
Exactly.
And so, yes, completely depressed or really severely anxious or angry, total contentment is not a likely next step.
No. That would be asking an awful lot, especially if we're not really in practice about it. If you're really, really in practice and you've been doing this for years and years, you might have a chance of getting there in one step. But that's after a lot of practice.
Yes, and so for the average person just getting into this, it's such it is that progress that gives them a little bit of progress, gives them the ability to move forward. But when most people, when we're talking about they don't like that concept early that they are in charge of their thoughts. They're in charge of their happy choices or negative choices. And then when I say they don't like it, because they've been conditioned, we talked last week a lot about blame. Well, this isn't my fault because see, when what happens, and this is the full circle to what we were talking about last week, when you are in charge of your happiness, your sadness is your responsibility. And it's much easier when other people are responsible for our sadness.
Yep.
And it's that awakening that's where the resistance is.
Yeah.
When you tell me I'm responsible for my happiness, that makes me responsible for my emotions and feelings. And I've been brought up to believe the way I feel is not my choice. And that goes against it. And then that's where that blame thing comes in.
Yeah, that's why it's so good to avoid the blame. We got to keep blame out of the equation as much as possible, because all that does is it gives us the excuse to say, well, I don't have the ability to change. That's the whole point of blame. Blame, right. If you can blame anybody, anything, if you can blame something else, then you don't have to change. What good is that?
Completely.
What good is that?
Completely. And that's why the law of attraction for a lot of people, it just becomes such a, I guess, frustrating thing for them, because it doesn't match the narrative that we're selling. Who's the levels of blame. Okay, well, this person's 48% of blame. This person's 52% of blame. And that's the narrative that it matches, and we gotta, hopefully we can get past all that and start saying, no, here's where we're at mentally. Here's where we're at physically. Here's what we have to do differently. And I'm in charge of this happiness piece. I'm in charge of, events have happened. My response to it remains my sole choice. And that is a great, I love that term choice. I like the empowering nature of it. A lot of people are fearful of the empowered nature because of the implied responsibility that goes along with it.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I like the power of choice. I like the power of, what's the word? There's not a word for this. What would be the opposite of blame? Empowerment? I don't know what it is.
Of responsibility, blame,
Well, even responsibility for some people has blame involved. I'm trying to think, what is the opposite of it? It's taking responsibility for yourself. I don't know what the word is. There's no word for it. But whatever that word is, that's the one. That's where we need to get to.
Right. Well, in a sense, blame is, in a sense, taking ownership of your world, your responsibility. I don't have anybody to blame. I'm not blaming myself. I'm taking ownership of my emotions, period.
I guess it's like Abraham says. I guess the opposite of blame is lack of blame.
Yes. I like that. That's probably,
even
closest. Though the cardinal rule is never use the word in the definition of what you're trying to define. But it is accurate that, I own my responsibility for my happiness, period. And I remove any responsibility of your happiness from me. I don't have that. I don't, I'm sorry. I had a lady that used to work for me. It was one of the great examples that I was able to, it happened in real life. And, just to give a quick, she was like, I was working in South Carolina, director of a treatment center, very small treatment center. And I was a one-man show. I did group sessions, I did individual sessions. And I had a business partner that would come into town, once a month, and he would do some sessions. And we started becoming very successful. It was a gambling specific treatment center. And, so this lady comes up to work with me that I didn't know her very well. And I'd been used to doing a one-man show for a while. So she came up there, and I was not angry she was there. I didn't really care that she was there. I didn't, it took me a while to accept that, okay, she's going to be able to help. I wanted her to do the benign stuff, the grocery shopping, and she wanted to be actively involved in the treatment of clients. And so the first month or so she was up there, this was in South Carolina. She had friends that visited, and her ego was, she was liking the fact she was now involved in this treatment center, and so one of the clients, while the friends were visiting, came up to her and said, Susan, I want to be leaving tomorrow, and I wanted to tell you thank you for your help. She said, well, I didn't know you were leaving. He goes, well, I told Joel 2 days ago. And so now this happened in front of her friends. Well, she called me that night furious. She said, how dare you not tell me so-and-so was leaving? I was humiliated in front of my parents and then my friends.
Yeah.
And I said, let me own my piece. I said, I apologize for not letting you know he was leaving. You are involved. I should have. And I was wrong there. I didn't think about it at the time. I didn't set out to be wrong, but I should have told her. But I was planning on it, but I should have told her immediately. I said, I will own that part. Your insecurity involving your friends has absolutely nothing to do with me. So you figure that piece out, but I'll own my piece of this. I own the piece that I should have told you, but I don't care that you're insecure with your friends. Well, that offended her. And like 2 or 3 days later, she said, "Well, I was offended by that." And I go, "I'm sorry. I'll probably re-offend you now. That I'm sorry that you're offended. It was not my intent, but I don't care. It's not. None of this is my stuff. It's your stuff." And we eventually ended up having a great working relationship and doing very well. But in the beginning, it was very clear. And that was a great example of, I needed to do this. I needed to do something. But I did not need to not inform her. She was a business partner. She should have heard. But at the same time, I'm not responsible for her view of being humiliated because she didn't know what a client was doing.
And we could also look at that from the blame perspective. If we were in the blame mentality, like she was starting out to be, well, in that mentality, then not only did you have to apologize for not having informed her, you had to apologize for how she felt about how her friends saw the situation where she didn't know what was going on. So now you're responsible for her feelings at all times.
Yes.
Which is an impossible place to be. Well, that means that you're going to start getting resentful about that too, because you can't possibly win in that situation. So you're going to set up situations where she starts to get resentful. And now you got two resentful people who can't seem to let go of anything. That's the power of blame.
Exactly. Yes. And you're so correct. And that's why being in charge of where you're at is such an amazing thing. I'm in charge of being happy. What more power exists in that?
None.
I'm not in charge.
There's no other. I can't think of any other. I mean,
well, and that's so important to see.
It is. It is. I mean, I never really did understand what the roles of emotions were until the last year. During that year is when I understood. I learned from you and from others who are my co-hosts that, and also from stuff that we've read in the books, that emotions are what happens when our physical being is not in alignment with our inner being, the two parts of ourselves. There's the non-physical side and the physical side. When they're not in alignment, that's where we're feeling negative emotion. When we're in alignment, that's where we're feeling positive emotion. That was the first time I ever had a clear idea of what emotion was about, that it's disagreeing or agreeing with ourselves. And once I understood that, now all of a sudden emotion was powerful for me. Up until then, I felt like a victim. But from that point on, now I knew, emotion's a signal to me. Now I understand. If I'm feeling bad, that's a signal that I'm out of alignment with myself. And it has nothing to do with anybody else. It's me. Well, shoot, I can do something about that. Now that I know how the whole thing works, I have power now that I didn't have before just by knowing that. That to me was a big moment.
Well, and that is such a big thing to see. I'm glad you're seeing it and have learned it, because it is sort of the basis of, in my mind, good mental health.
It is.
It is removing others' expectation of making you happy. I can't expect other people to make me happy. They're not relevant in my pursuit of happiness. Mm-hmm. There's people I enjoy being around. There's people I enjoy talking to you every week. But you're not responsible for my happiness. No. I'm the one that gets to I'm happy because we're talking. I enjoy that. You're not responsible for that. You're a part of it. But at the end of the day, it's my interpretation of what's taking place today that matters.
Exactly. Exactly right. And how nice to have power. I mean, I think about all the different people who don't understand that one important distinction. Maybe they do understand. Maybe more people understand than I realize. But my perception is there's so many people, just based on their behavior, who don't understand that, who don't realize that when they're feeling a negative emotion, it's a wonderful signal. It's a signal that they're out of alignment with themselves. And that all of those other situations where they're blaming this or blaming that is really just a way of avoiding the fact that they're out of alignment with themselves. They're just not. Their inner being is feeling good about themselves, and they're choosing to feel bad, and so they feel bad. Well, that means it's in our power. It's not up to somebody else. It has nothing to do with who's being blamed. All that is extraneous and erroneous. It has nothing to do with what we're feeling. We feel deliberately whenever we choose to feel deliberately.
Yes. And deliberate thought, deliberate feelings, deliberate emotions are a great tool. And when you're,
They are.
and as we talk about, the vibration of those emotions have its own frequency. And when you're happy, people are able to pick up on your happiness, and they're able to, whether they identify it or not, if you're selling a product and you're happy and people pick up on your happiness, you're more likely to sell that product than if people are picking up on your lack of happiness or your sadness or your depression or your anxiety.
Boy, is that ever
What
true.
you're putting out there. Yeah. So, I mean, it's such I've used the term life hack a lot. It's such an easy way to cut through silliness in your life when you just say, it is incredibly simple to be happy and incredibly complex at the same time.
Yeah.
Because it's so simple. It's just, I need you to behave a certain way to make me happy is an old thought process that you'll waste so many years of energy on if you don't get a handle on it. And it's such as you said, the most empowering thing is I now have the power. I have given the ultimate power in the universe because I'm in charge of my happiness. That's exciting.
It is exciting, and it's empowering, and it's thrilling because, wow, there's actually something I can do about my situation in life, whatever it is, no matter what it is that I'm not happy about or I'm not thrilled about because it's not working out the way. Hey, I still get to control how I react to it, and that's not a small thing. That's not just covering something over with a Band-Aid. That's good because that's the law of attraction, right? Whatever we focus on, whatever we think about predominantly, that's the kind of thing that tends to come into our lives. Well, just by shifting our thoughts and shifting our emotions, we change our experience. Whoa, powerful stuff there.
Completely. I mean, and that is that piece right there is sort of we can make it as complicated and have discussions as much as we want, but that is sort of the law of attraction. It's point right there.
It is.
Yes, this is. We invite what we want into our lives by how we feel. That's it's more feeling. You know, a lot of times people say, "Well, I've been thinking positive thoughts and it is not working." I go, well, the positive thoughts are a conduit to your emotions. You really need to feel happy, not just be thinking happy. You need to feel positive, not just, you have to have a overall positive view of things. You can't just say, I am happy, where's my $1 million? It doesn't work that way.
Exactly. Yeah. Or to put it another way, we say that it's a positive thought without feeling it. And I have to ask the question, if you're not feeling it, how do you know that it's positive? Is it positive because you remember at some point that was a positive feeling that you associated with whatever this is, and so therefore that's what makes it positive? Because if that's what you're doing, you're really not evaluating from your own perspective. You're evaluating from your memory. What you want to do is evaluate from your perspective. Your perspective is, how do I feel right now about it? Because that's how you know whether something is positive or negative. I mean, it's quite possible for two people to have the same experience, and one says it's a positive and the other says it's a negative, just because they have different perspectives. The important thing is, what are they actually feeling? That's what tells whether it's positive or negative. Not that it's objectively positive. There's no such thing. All positivity, all negativity is subjective by nature. It has to be, because it's about personal perspective.
Well, we have. I went to last weekend. We went to see the Infinity War movie, the Avengers Infinity War.
Oh, okay.
And I love the superhero movies, and we've watched them all over the years. And so we went to see it. It was a big event. It has given a lot of attention. And so Justin and I were there, and then a friend of mine from the gym was there with his son. So we spoke briefly, and we were not sitting right next to each other. We were close to. So afterwards, I thought the movie, because it had so much hype and it had a lot of twists and turns and sort of a cliffhanger ending, and I thought it was okay. It wasn't the best superhero movie I've ever seen. It was okay. That was my perspective. My buddy came and said, "Isn't that the best Marvel movie of all time?" I'm like, no, I don't think so. But it was good. I'm glad we went. I really did. So part of understanding what do we really feel, what do we, and one's not want right or wrong, but I was happy to be at the movie. I had a great time at the movie. It was very fun, but I didn't particularly think it was the best of all the Marvel movies. I just thought it was like, wow, that was a little long. I don't like the really long ones. And it left us with obviously an entire movie we have to watch before it makes any sense. So, so I wasn't that enthralled with the movie. But again, his perspective was different, and we both saw the same movie in the same theater at the same time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We saw we saw it, and that's okay. That's the piece that we got to accept. It isn't being dictated to us. You should be happy because of
exactly
your life. That's one of the big mistakes. We're assuming we should be happy because of something. And no, we're in charge of the happy.
Yeah, you're right. Movies are a great way to debunk the idea of an objective sense of what's positive and what's negative, that certain things are positive and certain things are negative, and that's just objectively true. Well, if you want to debunk that, very simple. Go to RottenTomatoes.com. It's a website where people review movies that they've seen, and you get both professional reviewers and you get just average, people from at large who do their own. This is what I thought about the movie that I saw, and inevitably, every single movie, you will never find a movie where everyone agrees it is 100% positive or 100% negative. It's always some percentage of the population who thought it sucked, and another percentage of the population that thought it was great. Which means there is no objective reason. There is no objective evaluation. There is no objective good or bad. It doesn't exist.
Well, you could pick any random product, the highest rated product on Amazon, and I don't know what that would be, but I'm sure they could tell you. And at the end of the day, when you back up and you look at the reviews, inevitably there's going to be someone that's not happy.
That's right.
You just can't please all people.
Can't be done.
One of the things that a friend of mine has a medical practice, and he does very well. He's a medical doctor, and he specializes in holistic thought and medicine, and along with traditional medicine, which I love that concept. And he's very frustrated because one of his clients left a pretty negative review. And he said, I can't, because of HIPAA laws, he can't respond directly to the review.
Mm-hmm.
And, so the idea that someone out there, he had 5 reviews before, all perfect, and one comes along and gives him a 1 because the lady basically couldn't get prescription painkillers, which he doesn't do that, gave him this bad rating.
Mm.
And so, he can't respond. And so it's really frustrating to him. And I said, because her perspective was solely based, she didn't want what you have to offer. The point of him, he's works with people with pain problems, but from a holistic standpoint, healing the root of the cause versus trying to just treat the pain. Well, she walked in the door with the idea that he was going to just give her a bunch of Oxycontins, and that isn't what he does.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very, and I said, well, maybe to not disappoint people in the beginning, maybe we need to, help you weed out the people that are going there and let's come up with the best way we can to help not let this happen again. So we created sort of a script when people call in to set their appointment. They're explained in the beginning, there is not a scenario that you'll be written an opiate medication for.
Right.
You won't. We don't do that here. And if you need that, then let's don't even come to this practice. And he's weeded out a few people that way. And then there'll be less people that are disappointed,
right? Because
they thought they would go in there. So again, perspective is an individual thing. While he offers great help to those that want it, if you're not after what he's after, he's going to appear to be a quack. And that's, that's that all of us are that way in life. We live in a world where people have an opinions, and no matter how great the product or service, there's always going to be someone who's not happy.
The fun thing about negative reviews, which really illustrates this whole idea about how there are different perspectives about what's positive and what's negative. The thing about negative reviews that I love, particularly on Amazon, is if I'm looking at a product that I'm thinking about buying, I will always go to look at the negative reviews first. And you're going to say, well, why would you want to do that? It's such a negative thing to do. But it depends on how you read them. If I go to the negative reviews and I see a whole bunch of people saying stuff in the negative reviews that really makes a big difference to me, well, then I'm not going to buy the product. But if I see a bunch of people writing negative reviews about how Amazon didn't ship it fast enough, or how about they had this really ridiculous perspective about what the product was going to do, and that's all the reviews are about, I say, well, shoot, this must be a good product. I'm buying it.
Right. That's such a good way to use the concept of the reviews are there. Everybody has there are certain people that do not want other people to be successful. So they will, they have such a negative view of life. They enjoy sabotaging products, and that's out there. So that's the reality that we get to choose so much in our life that we don't realize for most of us don't realize for the longest time that stuff is in our control. And then once you are able to apply it, what an amazing journey life can be. But until then, wow, it's tough.
I've found also that there is a tremendous credibility problem that someone has who leaves lots of negative reviews. And that credibility almost always reflects back on their social lives. So
right.
If we get concerned about somebody who's leaving a negative review, it's almost inevitable, unless it was something you really screwed up on, it's almost inevitable that if you were to somehow be able to check back to find out what their social circles think about that person, the reaction is almost uniformly going to be negative. Oh, God, that person is so right. A or so B or so C. I'm so tired of their D or their E. That's the kind of thing you're going to hear about that, because that's what comes out of their mouths all the time. So it's like it has a built-in discount factor that just carries no weight at all. I remember Louise and I had this conversation about the gardening business early on, in which we talked about, well, what happens if somebody says something bad? And it's like, well, if they say something bad because we screwed up, that's one thing. That's something we can fix. If they say something bad because of something that's outside of our power, it's not going to carry any weight. Nobody's going to listen to that. People are too smart to right. listen to that kind of thing. And you just right. have to recognize that fact.
Yeah, and I have friends that own restaurants, and so much of today's restaurants reviews are very important, and they really attract attention. And I know people that spend a great deal of a lot of time on quality and making sure that everything's right and making it right if it's not. And yet, despite all that energy, there's people that's going to come along and they're having a bad day, and the review has zero to do with the restaurant or quality of food, and more about the review of their day. And I noticed when I waited tables years ago, early in my recovery, I used to think it would appear that some people were going out to have a bad time. They went out with a negative mindset in the beginning. The moment you met them, they were negative. And it's like there's a certain group of people that's going to be, but we don't have. We are in charge. If you get to choose your negative, you can choose your positive.
You can,
and that becomes what you're anticipating in a day. So. We're blessed to be able to do this every week. We get to talk about the things that really change our lives and change people's lives by simply changing the way you look at things. And that there's no greater gift than that. Oh,
there is none. And I'm so glad that you're one of the co-hosts that I've had for long. Actually, you've been a co-host longer than anybody else for me. Among those who are still doing it, the only ones who did it longer ago were my brother and sister-in-law, and they're not doing it with me anymore. So you're the long-standing one, and I really appreciate your help.
Oh, that's awesome.
So thanks for doing it with me all these years, and I look forward to talking to you again next week.
All right, Walt. Thank you, buddy.
And we hope that you will join us all as well next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.